Hey, this is Mark Wingfield, Executive Director of Baptist News Global. I just want to say a word of thanks here at Year End for your faithful support of our work throughout 2025. What an incredible year it has been for news. And rather than backing off, we have doubled down. We've been able to increase our coverage, increase our podcasts, increase our footprint, tell you more, bring you more, keep you informed, and keep telling the truth because of your financial support for our nonprofit enterprise that is and always has been and always will be reader supported. Thanks so much.
Welcome to another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. You're listening to a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State, featuring writer, poet, and musician Rick Pidcock. Now here's Rick.
Good evening, America. 11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country.
Last night, with Christmas decorations in the background, President Trump gave a primetime address to the nation. Or perhaps we should say he mostly yelled at us for 18 minutes. Whenever he mentioned anything positive, it was all his doing. In fact, California Governor Gavin Newsom sent out a tweet that said, "Trump tonight," followed by the word "me" 161 times. On the other hand, whenever he mentioned anything negative, it was all either former President Biden's fault or immigrants' fault.
Driving up housing costs was the colossal border invasion. We have never been invaded. This is the worst thing that, frankly, in my opinion, the worst thing that the Biden administration did to our country is the invasion at the border. The last administration and their allies in Congress brought in millions and millions of migrants and gave them taxpayer-funded housing while your rent and housing costs skyrocketed. Over 60% of growth in the rental market came from foreign migrants. At the same time, illegal aliens stole American jobs and flooded emergency rooms, getting free health care and education paid for by you, the American taxpayer. They also increased the cost of law enforcement by numbers so high that they are not even to be mentioned. For the first time in 50 years, we are now seeing reverse migration as migrants go back home, leaving more housing and more jobs for Americans. In the year before my election, all net creation of jobs was going to foreign migrants. Since I took office, 100% of all net job creation has gone to American-born citizens.
Oh, and don't forget transgender people and words such as that.
In women's sports, transgender for everybody, crime at record levels with law enforcement, and words such as that just absolutely forbidden. We had the worst trade deals ever made, and our country was laughed at from all over the world. But they're not laughing anymore. Over the past 11 months, we have brought more positive change to Washington than any administration in American history. There's never been anything like it, and I think most would agree. I was elected in a landslide, winning the popular vote and all 7 swing states and everything else.
I'm not really sure what words such as that even means, but in short, his speech had an unbelievable number of fabrications. Here was CNN's Daniel Dale on with Caitlin Collins listing just a handful of them.
Caitlin, that was a fact-check-it, half-asleep kind of presidential speech. So many of these claims have been debunked so many times. For example, the president said inflation is stopped. As Harry pointed out, it's not stopped. It's 3%. In fact, September, that 3% rate was the 5th consecutive month inflation had increased. The president also said that he inherited the worst inflation. He said some might say in the history of the country. Again, he inherited 3% inflation in January. Even the 9.1% peak of the Biden era in June 2022 was about a 40-year high, not a 48-year high, nowhere close to the all-time high of more than 23%. He spoke of cutting prescription drug prices by 400 to 600%. Those figures are mathematically impossible. If you cut it by more than 100%, people would get paid to get their medications, which of course is not happening. He said the price of eggs has fallen, which is true, but then he said everything else is falling rapidly, Everything else is not falling rapidly. In fact, even on groceries in particular, far more products have increased in price this term than have decreased. He said again, he secured $18 trillion in investment this year. That number is total fiction. Even the White House website uses a figure of $9.6 trillion. And my detailed review found that that figure is a wild exaggeration, accounting vague promises, vague not even promises, and so on. He spoke of some states hitting $1.99 for gas. The lowest state average today is closer to $2.40. About 100 stations out of about 150,000 stations are below $2, according to the firm Gas Buddy. He also talked about immigration, made false claims there, saying that an army of 25 million people invaded the country under President Biden. Leaving aside this army rhetoric, the number was not even close to 25 million. It was under 11 million, and that counts millions of people who were rapidly expelled from the country. Crime was nowhere close to record high under President Biden. He has not settled, President Trump has not settled 8 wars. That list includes various wars, various situations that were not even wars, and some conflicts that have not actually been resolved. I could go on. I don't have time. So visit CNN.com, and we'll have a full list later.
The Trump administration doesn't care about truth. They don't care about reality. They want to have no cases of measles while dismissing vaccinations. They want to cure cancer while cutting off the funding to cancer research. They want to defend religious liberty while storming churches and chasing parishioners into the woods. They're living in absolute non-reality. And don't forget, Trump is a billionaire. He isn't a doctor. He isn't struggling to put food on the table. He's not concerned about his health insurance. He has no idea what normal, everyday Americans are struggling with in real life. So as he lives in his non-reality of passing the buck on others and taking credit for things that aren't even true, he tries to convince us by shouting at us. Here was Terry Moran on CNN.
He was loud. He was loud. He was forceful. He was fast. I mean, the networks only gave him 15 minutes, supposedly, and that is a problem for him because he likes to ramble. He likes to improvise. And he sounded like a man shouting at the nation that entire time. And more problematically for him is that when you try to tell people 2 things, the guy who's gone, it's still his fault. And 2, it's not as bad as you think it is. I've done all these great things. The facts of people's own lives will refute you. I thought that was a huge mistake that he tried to say, I've done all this great stuff that's helping you, when the numbers show people think this economy is very bad for them personally, and he's shouting at them.
The pattern is clear. Blame anything negative on someone in the past, then ignore the current reality while making our team look better than they are. In addition to his ridiculous primetime speech, Trump also had the official plaques of previous presidents changed out in the White House. Under President Obama's picture are now 2 golden plaques that say, quote, Barack Hussein Obama was the first black president, a community organizer, one-term senator from Illinois, and one of the most divisive political figures in American history. As president, he passed the highly ineffective Unaffordable Care Act, resulting in his party losing control of both houses of Congress and the election of the largest House Republican majority since 1946. He presided over a stagnant economy, approved the terrible Iran nuclear deal, and signed the one-sided Paris Climate Accords, both of which were later terminated by President Donald J. Trump. Under Obama, the ISIS caliphate spread across the Middle East, Libya collapsed into chaos, and Russia invaded and took Crimea in Ukraine. He crippled small businesses with crushing regulation and environmental red tape, devastated American coal miners, and weaponized the IRS and federal bureaucracies against his political opponents. Obama also spied on the 2016 presidential campaign of Donald J. Trump and presided over the creation of the Russia hoax, the worst political scandal in American history. His hand-picked successor, Hillary Rodham Clinton, would then lose the presidency to Donald J. Trump. Then Trump ordered President Biden's photo to be replaced with a picture of the auto pen, and Biden's golden plaques now say, Sleepy Joe Biden was by far the worst president in American history, taking office as a result of the most corrupt election ever seen in the United States. Biden oversaw a series of unprecedented disasters that brought our nation to the brink of destruction. His policies caused the highest inflation ever recorded, leading the U.S. dollar to lose more than 20% of its value in 4 years. His Green New Scam surrendered American energy dominance, and, by abolishing the southern border, Biden let 20 million people from all over the world pour into the United States, including from prisons, jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums. His Afghanistan disaster was among the most humiliating events in American history and resulted in the murder of 13 brave American service members, with many others gravely wounded. Seeing Biden's devastating weakness, Russia invaded Ukraine, and Hamas terrorists launched the heinous October 7th attack on Israel. Nicknamed both sleepy and crooked, Joe Biden was dominated by his radical left handlers. They and their allies in the fake news media attempted to cover up his severe mental decline and his unprecedented use of the auto pen. Following his humiliating debate loss to President Trump in the big June 2024 debate, he was forced to withdraw from his campaign for re-election in disgrace. Biden weaponized law enforcement against his political opponent while also persecuting many other innocent people. He left office issuing blanket pardons to radical Democrat criminals and thugs, as well as members of the Biden crime family. But despite it all, President Trump would get re-elected in a landslide and save America. Then, in contrast, President Trump's plaques say this. On January 20th, 2025, Donald J. Trump became the first president in 132 years to be sworn into office for a second non-consecutive term, following his historic victory in an electoral college landslide, 312 to 226. Overcoming unprecedented weaponization of law enforcement against him, as well as 2 assassination attempts, he won all battleground states by millions of votes, was the first Republican in decades to win the popular vote big, and won 86% of counties in America, 2,700 to 525. All 50 states shifted toward the Republican Party for the first time ever. At his inauguration, President Trump announced the beginning of the golden age of America, and he delivered, ending 8 wars in his first 8 months, securing the border, deporting gang members and migrant criminals, making our cities safe, helping our farmers, and defeating inflation, reducing energy costs, and drawing trillions of dollars of new investment, a record into the United States. President Trump signed the largest tax cuts in American history, the largest spending cuts in American history, and implemented the largest ever regulation cuts. He obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity with Operation Midnight Hammer, convinced NATO countries to agree to increase contributions from 2 to 5% of GDP, reformed the global trading system, and made America rich with historic tariffs, removed critical race theory and transgender insanity from public schools, and banned men from women's sports. He began the construction of the Golden Dome missile defense shield, renamed the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, and has built right here in the White House the magnificent Trump presidential ballroom after a 225-year wait. But the best is yet to come. And unfortunately for the rest of us, his white evangelical base falls for it. Time after time after time. Election after election after election. They're living in the same non-reality that Trump is, blaming anything negative today on someone in the past, then ignoring the current reality while making the white evangelical Republican team look better than they are. It's like during the debate when he brought up the cats and dogs story. He's accusing people of this non-reality of eating cats and dogs, and then they're coming up with this solution to get rid of these people who are eating cats and dogs. It makes zero sense. It's not based on reality. And yet what is real is the harm that is being done to our neighbors by their ignorance and by their using of lies to wield power against everyone. And it's not just Trump or white evangelical Trump supporters who are living in non-reality. It's bigger than simply wanting a Republican presidential candidate to win an election. I have a piece that just came out this week titled Hegseth Plans Cultural Shift for Military Chaplains, where I talk about Secretary of War Pete Hegseth wanting to make the military chaplaincy great again.
I'm here to tell you about a real problem facing our nation's military. It's one you're probably not aware of, but it's a really important one. And it's been going on for far too long. The weakening of our chaplain corps.
As I shared in my piece, the next day Hegseth hosted a Christmas worship service at the Pentagon that featured Franklin Graham preaching a message that God loves, but God also hates, and that God also is a God of war. So Hegseth is planning a top-down makeover of the chaplaincy. One of the ways Hegseth plans to make the chaplaincy great again is by eliminating the Army Spiritual Fitness Guide.
Sadly, as part of the ongoing war on warriors, in recent decades, its role has been degraded. In an atmosphere of political correctness and secular humanism, chaplains have been minimized, viewed by many as therapists instead of ministers. Faith and virtue were traded for self-help and self-care. If you need proof, just look at the current Army Spiritual Fitness Guide. In well over 100 pages, it mentions God one time. That's it. It mentions feelings 11 times. It even mentions playfulness, whatever that is, 9 times. There's zero mention of virtue. The guide relies on New Age notions, saying that the soldier's spirit consists of consciousness, creativity, and connection. The guide itself reports that around 82% of the military are religious, yet ironically it alienates our warfighters of faith by pushing secular humanism. In short, it's unacceptable and unserious, so we're tossing it. I have a directive right here that I will sign today to eliminate the use of the Army Spiritual Fitness Guide effective immediately. These types of training materials have no place in the War Department. Our chaplains are chaplains, not emotional support officers, and we're going to treat them as such.
According to the Army Spiritual Fitness Guide, Hegseth is mocking, quote, consciousness refers to the state of being aware of and able to evaluate one's thoughts, feelings, and surroundings. It encapsulates the ability to understand oneself and one's place in the world, unquote. It goes on to say, quote, art provides a therapeutic outlet, helping soldiers articulate feelings that may be difficult to express verbally. Studies in psychology have shown that artistic engagement can foster emotional healing, reduce stress, and enhance overall well-being, unquote. But apparently, Hegseth doesn't think soldiers need to be aware of and able to evaluate their surroundings. He also apparently doesn't think soldiers need to be healed, because healing and awareness are supposedly secular humanism. And given Hegseth's constant drumbeat for the violent, toxic masculinity that is a feature of the conservative reformed movement associated with men like Doug Wilson, it makes sense. Self-awareness and healing are ideas that angry, violent men like Hegseth don't tend to resonate with. So Hegseth is throwing the whole thing out. He's also going after the faith and belief coding system. As I said in my piece, for many years this coding system was very basic and included such terms as Protestant and Catholic. But as most people with self-awareness know, religious identity is far more nuanced these days. So in 2017, the military created a new coding system with more than 200 options for military personnel to choose from. There are no religious or theological requirements for these categories. They're simply administrative tools for demographic analysis that help the military serve their members more effectively. But Hegseth thinks the coding is woke and needs to be stripped back down again.
That's why today at my direction, we are also simplifying the faith and belief coding system. In recent years, it ballooned to over 200 overly complex faith and belief codes. An overwhelming majority of the military population only uses 6 codes. 11 are not used by anyone. So we're going to streamline it and move it to a new list of religious affiliation codes so that our chaplains can actually use it to minister better to the flock.
And apparently Hegseth says he has even more great ideas coming down the pike.
More reforms will be coming in the days and weeks ahead. There will be a top-down cultural shift, putting spiritual well-being on the same footing as mental and physical health, as a first step toward creating a supportive environment for our warriors and their souls. We're going to restore the esteemed position of chaplains as moral anchors for our fighting force. The 1956 Army Chaplains Manual states, quote, "The chaplain is the pastor and the shepherd of the souls entrusted to his care," end quote. This is a high and sacred calling, But this only works if our shepherds are actually given the freedom to boldly guide and care for their flock. Stay tuned for more. We are going to make the Chaplain Corps great again. And Merry Christmas.
But the themes with Hegseth are the same ones as the themes with Trump. He's making up problems and then blaming them on someone in the past, and then he's ignoring the reality of the present while making his team look better than they are. And just like with Trump, white evangelicals lap it up. Despite how disconnected from reality Hegseth's vision is, white evangelicals love it. Of course, it makes no sense. This should have nothing to do with white evangelical theology or anyone's theology. Everyone should just know, based on common sense, that the spiritual health of soldiers could be improved by focusing on awareness of their surroundings and processing their feelings over what they've experienced in war. There's no secular humanism about that. It's just human. But again, white evangelicals and the Trump administration can't handle the truth, which is pretty ironic. After all, we're talking about the group of people who claim to follow the truth, who have been set free by the truth, who have the sole authority of truth for faith and practice in a perfectly inerrant Bible. How could they, of all people, be so immersed in non-reality? Could it be that their idea of truth is rooted in non-reality? Remember, we're also talking about the same people who play Canaanite conquest cosplay by having Jericho marches around state capitol buildings. We're talking about the same people who think the universe is 6,000 years old and was created in a state of total perfection, but fell into brokenness and death when two people ate a piece of fruit. Theologian John Hott says, quote, "With rare exceptions, Christian thought has not yet looked carefully at the dramatic implications of evolutionary biology and astrophysics for our understanding of God and the world," unquote. Ilia Delio agrees, writing in The Hours of the Universe, Reflections on God, Science, and the Human Journey, quote, "We have not accepted evolution as our story. Politically, we have fiefdoms and kingdoms. Socially, we have tribes and cults. Religiously, we have hierarchy and patriarchy," unquote. White evangelicals easily accept non-reality from people like Trump and Hegseth because their entire theological framework is the celebration of non-reality. That affects everything they do, because by framing the problem in non-reality, they try to solve non-existent problems with non-existent solutions. And ultimately, that gets us to the heart of Christmas. If Jesus is God incarnate, then why would Jesus come to the earth? Why would Jesus be born? If the white evangelical theological story is based in non-reality and their practical fruit is the celebration of men like Trump and Hegseth who live in non-reality, then how can we take white evangelical theologies of the incarnation and justice as real? In their world, Jesus would be coming to solve non-real problems. And at least for me, acting all certain and celebratory about Jesus solving non-real problems makes no sense. I simply can't blame our world's problems on a guy named Adam who likely didn't exist and who we definitely didn't descend from eating fruit 6,000 years ago. I can't simply celebrate justice as having been accomplished through the punishment of Jesus 2,000 years ago. And I can't pretend that anything has been made new if the power dynamics of empire are ignored and remain in place, and in fact are sacralized by Christians. So we need to explore how Christians can have a reality-based theology that actually brings good news of liberation, healing, and transformation to the real world. But unfortunately, we're out of time for today. So we'll pick up on some of these themes next week to begin sorting through what it might mean to move from Trump and Hegseth's reality-denying view of faith and power to one that could bring some real good news. Thank you so much for listening. Please like, subscribe, and rate us on your favorite podcast platform, and we'll be back with another episode on Monday.
This has been another change-making conversation from Baptist News Global. The episode you've just heard is part of a special podcast series titled Highest Power, Church and State. Be sure to follow BNG daily at baptistnews.com and subscribe to get notifications about future episodes. Baptist News Global is a national nonprofit news service that is independent, free, and faithful. BNG is supported by readers and listeners like you. Learn more at baptistnews.com.
This episode was produced and edited by Mac Bowles of TKG Communications, LLC, Dallas, Texas.